discussion. Woo! Welcome back. We had some great discussion in my group, and I'm sure you guys did too. So I wanted to open it up and see if there's any kind of aha moments for you, anything that y'all want to share that y'all discussed in your smaller groups.
Hi
I
everyone,
just,
I'm Green. Uh, we had great discussion in ours as well. Right as we were getting to the end, I had an aha moment personally about dissociation. Stephanie was talking about the kids who get dropped, um, and you don't even know who they are, right? And so those kids started to dissociate. And so it is last week, I think Dr. Perry showed the synapses like growing
Mhm.
and what that actually looks like. And I'm a bit of a comic Marvel nerd. And so if you saw the Loki season, like when all of the portals are, coming back online, it's very much that, like when you start to associate again. And so I had like all those five things happened as in my group as we were talking, and my microphone was off and I didn't realize, and I was like, oh, 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 like it was really happening like they all real time saw all of that happen for me in understanding my own dissociation as a child, and now, going into my 50s and going like, oh, that makes sense. And then this journey with our teenage children as I see that come back online. And so it
Yeah,
just was this I very much appreciate everybody's clinical and lived experience. And in that moment, we got to talk about what rocked us,
yeah,
like what brings you back together. Um, and when you're having these like low key moments and your synapses are like growing right in that moment, that might be why I start rocking.
yeah,
Um, because coming
yeah,
back online can be a bit much in the moment, right? Even
absolutely.
if you're in a safe cohort, you're
Yep.
like, oh. So yeah, that was a real time a moment of aha. And so I thank my group for being that container.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that's such a great that talk about that episode. Like you just see it all opening up. That's a great descriptor. Thank you. Anybody else? So we had some really good discussions about where someone's baseline regulation level is, where you start out most days, right? And so we like to think that most of us are at that calm and alert, but what we know is for a lot of us, we're more in that alarm. And so we were talking about if your baseline is at alarm, arousal, is that then it doesn't take a whole lot to kick you into that fear and terror state where you're very reactive, very emotionally responsive, or maybe you dissociate. That would be another option where you go away. And so we talked about what kinds of things can help you reestablish a more balanced baseline, a more regulated baseline to maybe you spend a little bit more time in that calm and alert. And so one of the things we talked about was how we can try to talk ourselves into things, and we all do this. We try to use that cortex to say, I need to calm down. It's not that big of a deal. I need to take some deep breaths. But that's really hard work. It's really tiresome. And it's a little bit less efficient than if we were to use some bottom up activities. And so we talked a lot about if you look at rhythmic, repetitive, patterned activities, and for every one of us, I think y'all figured this out, is that those could be different things for different people. I don't like podcasts. Podcasts are dysregulating for me, but I like music. Some people don't like music, they prefer podcasts, right? And so we all have these different things that are soothing to us or not. But if you combine those things, so instead of just trying to talk yourself into being regulated and say, I know I got a hard meeting or a hard phone call, I need to talk myself into being ready for it. You go outside, you get connected to nature and your senses. You might listen to music, you might take a walk around your building. When you're using more bottom up to help regulate, not just top down, it's going to be more effective. It's going to be more efficient. It's not going to wear you out quite as much. And so, one of the things we do is we try to depend too much on that cortex all the time to do all the work. So, understanding this can help us be intentional to not just when we're upset, we do something that's regulating, but that we're doing regulating things throughout our day and throughout our week throughout our month, so that we're trying to shift that baseline to be a little bit less responsive, a little bit more intentional and thoughtful, because then that cortex is more open for business.
And, Michelle, as you were reminding us of that, I was thinking too that, we're all adults here on the call and we do that. We do a lot more of that, using our cortex. But the
Yeah.
kids that we care for don't always have those resources. And so, thinking again about kids who may like be really upset and have big feelings and big behaviors or just cry, that they don't necessarily do that in terms of using their cortex to help regulate themselves. And so they need that help from us as caregivers to assist them sometimes.
Yeah. And we'll talk a lot about borrowing our calm, right? That they need to borrow the calm that we have. And a lot of that is going to be not using words, not using consequences, not using, this is what's going to happen in the future if you don't do this. But it's going to be us regulating ourselves, being parallel, not head on, right? Because being head on with someone is very threatening and stimulating, but being parallel and being calm, that non-anxious presence. And then if you're doing rhythmic repetitive, so maybe you just sit and you're just taking deep breaths, or maybe you're rocking back and forth, or maybe you're asking them if they'll go take a walk with you. You don't have to talk. We're not going to talk about anything. We're just going to go outside and see what we can hear, see what we can smell, all those kind of things, just to get them reconnected to that sensory experience and being connected to that instead of overwhelmed. Because we talked about, we've talked before about when things get so far down that you're in that fear or terror mode, you're very reflexive, very reactive, that we've got to do those, again, those more kind of primal things, those bottom up, rhythmic, repetitive things in order to calm ourselves down because the cortex is offline during that time. And that's all of us, not just the kids. Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, Tiff started our group off with the question as far as when we have somebody who's dysregulated and the struggle of like they have stopped a certain undesirable behavior that that the adult doesn't care for and it's
Yes.
stopped and now we assume that they are regulated and we start to move on and recognizing that length of time and the base so we had some discussion and Tiffany we had great conversation from the group, so anybody from the group want to kind of chime in on that because I thought that was really rich discussion.
Yeah, I think that that happens so frequently where people think that somebody is regulated, right? And they really have just maybe even just shut themselves down
Yeah.
or gotten just are not doing that non-preferred behavior, but
Yeah.
they're not quite, I just think that happens a whole lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
That happens with me. I will just quit talking, right? And it doesn't mean I'm calm. It just means I'm not, yeah. Yeah. So that's right. That doesn't mean you're regulated by any means. Yeah.
And I was just one of what I kind of started with was I think that's part of like with the world not understanding state dependent functioning, right? But the
Right.
word regulated and regulation is out there now.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's a big issue. So anyway, I just kind of put that out there and I definitely see it a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You see it's like that's the lens now, right? So if you see stuff on TV or see stuff in the parking lot or you see stuff in the news, you're like state dependent functioning. It's real, right? Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the we think that somebody's regulated and it's like they're good. They're stuck. They've made it there. And I live in Central Illinois. We have horrible internet. And so I talk about how we often have to go and check the connection. And it's the same, just because I'm connected right now doesn't mean I'm connected all day. And just because
Mhm.
I'm regulated right now does not mean in 30 seconds that my system may interpret something from the outside world and activate me again. And so recognizing how fluid that regulation piece is and how important it is for us as caregivers and providers to be attuned and attentive and responsive so that we can see what are those early signs of dysregulation so that we can start to support them early on rather than waiting until the big behaviors start to show up.
Yeah, which will take a lot longer, right? Yeah, and that so we're going to mention that several times, trying to catch things early. When there's a difference, right? There's a difference in behavior, there's a difference in breathing, there's a difference in tone, there's something that signals us that something's not right. And then the sooner we can catch it, which is why we talk so much about being present, attentive, attuned, and responsive. The sooner you can catch it, the easier it's going to be to prevent it from getting to a full-blown meltdown. Because once that happens, it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot of bottom-up activity and time and patience to bring them back down. Yeah, go ahead, Zephyrin.
Something about regulation. A term we use in our family is like, how many spoons do we have? And like, it's a low spoon week, right? It's a low spoon week. I think Brene Brown said, like, what does it take for her and Steve to just get through the week? It's a lot of takeout here. It's a lot of fast meals. You know, a lot of negotiation because the spoons are low. And so before I knew that, I often operated that like, well, we're not in actual chaos, so we must be regulated. But that's why I laughed, Michelle, when you're like, I'll just stop talking, because both, like, everyone in my family just will shut down, and then we're like, oh, we're fine.
Fine.
No, we're not. No one's fine. Everything's on fire. We're just not
Yes.
yelling, right? And so so we, again, none of this is perfect, and I think I've shared that we have a unique system where we're a homeschool family, but we have OT and PT come into our home, and therapist. And so that has been eye-opening, and that often we're starting with negative spoons in our family, but just because no one's yelling, we think we're good. And
Yeah.
so acknowledging, like, look, this is probably going to be a low spoon. Our family's ending a pilot the 31st of March. It's low spoons till the 31st of March in this house. Like, let's just admit it, right? And so that to me is very helpful. And I think I can't see their picture now. It was the person in one of the groups who brought up thinking everybody is fine. Tiff, thinking, I thumbs up that, because like that is so true. And thank you for saying that, because it's
Yeah.
not fine.
Yeah. Well, I love low spin. Like, I love that analogy because it's kind of non-threatening, and it's kind of, and it's kind of has a little bit of lightness to it instead of like, I'm out of my mind this week, right? But this is a low spin week. I love that. Yeah. Anybody
Something else
else? Yeah, go ahead,
Something
Michael.
else that we talked a little bit about the co-regulation piece and the piece as the caregiver of that it's can be very dysregulating for me when my
Mhm.
child is dysregulated, and there's that pressure to fake it till you make it kind of thing. And we use the example, we work with horses, and horses are very well aware of what's going on inside for me to determine if I'm a predator or not. So if there's a discrepancy between what's happening inside and what I'm showing outside, the horse is going to interpret that as a threat.
Yeah.
So as caregivers, when we are trying to co-regulate with our child, I think it's important for us to be able to appropriately model. I'm struggling to regulate right now. I'm trying, like, so that they're so perceptive, so aware of what's going on that their association, I did something wrong, they're mad at me, whatever. And so then that further dysregulates. So being able to model for them, I'm struggling and I'm working to regulate right now, even though, they may not have the words for that, but you are being congruent, which then allows their system to feel safer and
Mhm.
calm down. And so we just
Yeah.
spent some time talking about what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And we'll talk later too, just about, just like you said, just because you're not acknowledging it doesn't mean that they don't notice it. And so I think a lot of times we kind of are told that as the parent, we're not supposed to make mistakes, or we're not going to, or not let people know we need help, or not know that we don't know an answer. And so, exactly what you're talking about, to be able to model that instead of just being told about something is so much more powerful. And again, like you said, because you're being authentic, It's actually going to settle them down instead of overwhelm them. And so what is frightening is when you say something and it doesn't match the way that you're acting. Right. And so being able to model that, being able to show that I don't always have the answer. I'm not always in total control, those kind of things can help them realize, okay, that's how I need to handle things too, right? In an experience way, not just a word way, but in a way that they've had that experience with you. Yeah.
Um, what I find difficult is, well, you mentioned the phrase sharing your calm, and oftentimes the chaos is so strong that it's like they're sharing the
The
chaos with me
chaos.
instead of me sharing my calm, and I'm brought
Yes.
into that. But also, knowing when it's dysregulation or it's just that they regulate at a different tempo or something than we do, or have different regulating activities. So, for instance, like at the dinner table, it really stresses my wife out if they get up and move around while we're at the dinner table. Now, is that because they're dysregulated, or is it because they need to move? It's hard to tell sometimes which it is, or to tell when something is a regulating activity for them, or it's them rejecting regulation because they're more comfortable with chaos. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think this is a question that most people have, especially when we first start hearing about these things. A lot of especially teachers, I'll get feedback is they don't actually need to regulate. They're just making that as an excuse so they can have this fidget or they can chew gum or, or whatever, those kind of things. And for the most part, I will tell you, for the most part, um, kids might do that, even adults. Kids might do some of that initially when something's new to kind of test it out. But for the most part, we all gravitate to things that naturally soothe us. And so I think that we often think everything is planned out and like they're getting up to be disrespectful, right? Instead of most of the time, they're probably getting up because they need to move and they need to be regulated. And they might not be aware of that until they're already, or they might not ever be aware of that unless we bring it to their attention. And so I think it's good to kind of default to that understanding that we gravitate to things that are soothing to us. We don't typically gravitate to things that are going to, cause problems. And so, yeah, they might be more comfortable with movement instead of being quiet, but eventually they'll get to a place where they're able to experience longer periods of quiet without needing to create that chaos. But that takes a long time, right, to reset that. Just like it would if you're used to things being calm and balanced, it's going to take a lot for you to get to a point where chaos is comfortable for you. And so knowing that they will naturally kind of get to that set point again, that I can sit with this and I can be still, but it's going to take a while for that to be comfortable and familiar to them.
Gotcha.
Anybody else have comments or thoughts about that? Because I think this is huge. We all have these questions.
I don't think my experience has been that they really do need it. Um, Again, I have a 16-year-old and we were in part of the early ABA when she was like 3. And she was obsessed with looking at reflective surfaces. We also have kids who don't sit down and eat. This really did stress me out. They can do it when they need to. At home, they don't really do it. And to be honest, I hate to admit I stand up when I eat, so I don't know, like I didn't like that was kind of an ABA societal thing introduced into our home that I was like, I don't know if this is a hill I want to die on. And
Yeah.
then her and the reflective surfaces, like if we go out in public, come on, you guys. You know we gotta all mask. Let's do it, right? We gotta put on real clothes. Let's go do that. But if we're in the house, you want to wear ripped pajamas and walk around the table while you eat and no one's here. But that's to each family. And then her and the reflective surfaces, she's still at 16 and she'll just look at a reflective surface. It's not, but like they at one point were telling us to like cover them in our house. It got weird. Remember,
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
ABA,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
I think it's a family thing, David, when you're saying it, it dysregulates your partner. The same as my kid's father and I. Some things dysregulate us, but is it really a hill to die on with everything else we have going on? And but that
Right.
I feel like that's personal
Right. It
because
has to be
everything that we
negotiated,
do,
right? Yeah.
yeah, for the most part, when I tell you anything that I was taught that was like, oh, they're doing it because they wanted attention,
Mhm.
we have found out over time that there was a reason to every one of those things that actually makes sense.
Mhm.
And as an adult, when it's framed to you, you're like, yeah, I agree with the kid and I wouldn't want to do it that way either. So I feel like that's a negotiating thing in your family. That, but with your wife, like, come on now, we're out in public. Please sit down. Please sit down. Eat the food the way you know how to. But at home, I guess if you want to eat your nuggets with you, however, whatever, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
So something, David, as you were talking, the thing that I was thinking is what part of their brain is showing that they're needing support? And so that movement piece. So we're talking lower region. And so they're saying, I'm dysregulated, I'm needing support. And so I'm moving. Think about, like, do you ever get nervous and get the little Elvis leg? I was speaking, a couple weeks ago, and my leg just started bouncing. And I was like, instead of kind of being embarrassed by that, I was like, my body is responding to stress and is trying to regulate me. And
Mhm.
so our kids, they're showing your child is showing you that they are dysregulated and they're needing support in the lower regions. So something, in working through that, helping your spouse kind of process through that, they need that movement. But then we've also worked with families around as we're building that skill, can we start to put space where this is where you can move? So now allowing that movement, but I'm creating predictability for me that I know where we're going to move. And so, so just building that skill. And then if you stand, where are we going to put our chair when you stand so that you don't trip over your chair? And like all those little pieces that make it more predictable, those are things that I would wonder, but recognizing they need that they're expressing to us they need regulation. Can we
Mhm.
do that in a way that also feels good for us as caregivers?
Yeah. And I think that default of, everybody's doing the best that they can do, right? And then our job is to help figure out how to help them with that. And I think that's a hard shift for a lot of us that the traditional kind of things that we were taught about willful defiance, or they're doing this on purpose, or those kind of things. It's really hard to look at that differently and to override that. But no, again, just like Michael was saying, they're showing us whatever's going on, whether it's an adult or a child, when there's something that's a little, out of character or not typical, they're showing us that something's going on. They may not know what it is, but they need something. And again, like Michael was saying, we gravitate to whatever that is that our body needs to express. So needing to get some energy out, needing to have some rhythm. And then how can you kind of do some workarounds? I always talk about workarounds, like could it be sitting on an exercise ball? Could it be a wobble seat, right? Those half seats that gives you some proprioceptive input on the chair. Maybe that would be acceptable. And then he wouldn't feel like he had to walk around. But I think that default needs to always come from they're doing the best that they can. And then what do we need to do to support that? Because then we get really worked up. And I know a lot of this has to do with, the way we see ourselves as the way our kids behave. And we often are really hard on ourselves. And then we get a lot of really negative or poor feedback from other people telling us what to do and how to do it. And so really trying to be, we're our experts about our own kids and really knowing this is what my kid needs. This is what is okay for our family, and trying not to let those things make us feel bad about ourselves or make us feel like we don't know what we're doing. And that's hard. All of that's really hard. So, yep, go ahead, Stephanie.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I think David, and maybe I did dissociate for a minute while you were talking, so I apologize if I missed something. But what's also important, because I really want to respect too what you were saying about for your wife. Some of those things are really hard, because back to what Michael was saying about the co-regulation piece, it's not only that you have to be congruent with your language and with what's within, but a lot of the co-regulation happens in what we call the implicit. So it's not in the verbal, right? It's in our movements, it's in our voices, it's in our tone, it's in how fast, how little we moved. Again, those are the primary associations we're talking about. The memories are these physiological memories. They're not verbal memories. And so sometimes it's about sort of if it's something is really hard for us as a parent or a teacher or a caregiver, like it's just we notice it's really dysregulating to us. It might be something where we tap out, right? Like the fake it or make it won't work because we are so worked up. So I think there's also this idea of sometimes it is very hard because you might be told like, well, they need this, so you have to let them do it. But meanwhile, you're like, I physiologically can't, just like they can't not stand on the table. You can't just be there. So I think it's such a complicated dance because you have multiple sensory systems that are trying to work together. And
Mhm.
sometimes they're not working together well. Like you have to find a way to make that work. And so I don't know if there was something to that, to what you were saying, but it's how to attend to all those regulatory systems in a way. And I think, Zifreen, you talked about the negotiation, but I think sometimes negotiation is like, how can we sort of do it so that I can hold my regulatory state as best as I can so that I can kind of they can social reference and be like, oh, they're helping me, their voice and whatever is helping me calm down. So I don't, anyway, I just really wanted to say it's sometimes a really hard thing to figure out in a family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially when,
I
yeah.
appreciate all those thoughts. And it's funny, as everyone was talking, I noticed and it reminded myself that I was tapping a rhythm on my mouse and that I have ADD, but I'm very introverted. People think I'm calm all the time, but I've almost developed the masking way where like I tap rhythm. I was a music major as well, but I tap rhythms silently with my fingers or with my mouse or count the coins in my pocket repetitively. And that
Yeah.
might be just my way that I've learned to fit into society, but
Mhm.
still keep my sort of movement sort of happening.
Yep, in an acceptable way, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do. And the other thing I think we talked about too was we need to let go of some of those old things of like, that you need to look me in the eye, that you need to be still when you're trying to pay attention, you need to be sitting down, all these kind of things about kind of have given a little bit more grace for like differences in how what's regulating, differences in how we learn, differences in how we can hear and listen to people, and just understanding that everybody's different and you might need a lot of calm and quiet, and this person might need a lot of music and need to have a lot of things going on. And then how do you make those things balance out when there's differences? And so, yeah. All right, we've got 2 minutes. So if you have anything else you want to add, this is your time.
I have one quick question. When we started this block, you started with rhythmic, repetitive problem solving, rhythmic, repetitive relationships, and then movement. And then the first one, what was that? Um, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know. I
Um,
don't
you
know.
were the
Rhythmic, pattern, repetitive sensory input.
Oh,
sensory input.
mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. All right. So go ahead, Stephanie.
When you said let go of those sort of judgments or ideas, I do a lot of reflective work. And for me, I tell people, don't let them go because they're there. Just know that they're there. So if you start to feel bad because you're jingling your coins, David, I love all the things you realize you do that are sort of these regulatory, again, for you to start thinking rather than being like, oh my God, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm like a child with their little, bag of toys or whatever. Just be like, oh, here it is, right? Like it is. And the awareness is not about because you want to let go of this judgment that you have that your child should behave. It's just knowing like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and I know it's because I was told this. And so it's gonna happen because then people get into the like, oh, I'm not letting go of this thing, it's still here. It's gonna be there. Those sort of social messaging are really profound and impact us. But what might hopefully help you is just to be aware that that's what's operating. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think sometimes it alleviates a little bit of the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Change.
All right. Well, I just want to thank y'all. This again was a lovely time to spend together, and I really appreciate everybody's vulnerability and openness to looking at these things because it's hard. These things that we're talking about is hard. So do some bottom up, rhythmic, repetitive, patterned activity when you get off of here before you transition straight into your next event or activity. Try to take care of yourself. And I hope I see you all next week. Bye, y'all.